War Lions are one of those units that I want to love. They're just a little bit awkward to use in certain circumstances, but here against the Warriors of Chaos, they do afford you some anti-armored infantry tools that can be very good, especially against warriors of many types. Today I'm up against warriors with halberds, which are obviously probably the worst for the Lions to try and fight directly, but we've got RAWR here to provide some healing and some physical resistance and so forth. Infantry support consists of 2 rangers, 2 spearmen, and 1 white lion infantry. We've got 4 units of War Lions, including Rahagwar's Pride here, a couple of supporting Reavers as well, and the Regiment of Renown, Arcane Phoenix, Omen of Asuryan. I forget what this thing even has over the basic Arcane Phoenix, to be honest, but yeah, it's here. Up against Warriors of Chaos from the Emperor here, he's got Sorcerer, Lord of Shadows on a Manticore, Exalted Hero also on a Manticore. These Marauder Horsemasters are going to initially come forward to skirmish some Reavers, but kind of get multi-charged here by the Reavers and the Phoenix there. There's plenty of Marauder Infantry, some Warriors with Halberds as mentioned, Poison Warhounds. One thing to note, if we get back to the Lions, specific use case for them is because they're splash attacks and anti-infantry, they shred Hound units. Almost all Hound-type units, Chaos Warhounds, Dire Wolves, stuff like that, generally count as infantry. You can kind of see here, you compare them to the Horsemen, they've got this small entity size in comparison to these Chaos Knights with Lances coming in here, obviously count as large. So let's see how that goes. I'm kind of positioning my Spearmen to block these Knights here. Again, not really overcommitting any of my infantry into this fight. I want to kind of see how the Chaos fight develops. And now, like, these White Lions uncharged here can now come in with the Spearmen and the War Lions and all multi-collapse on that Knight that kind of overextends. Meanwhile, on the front line, though, Phoenix is definitely getting pounded 2v1 in the air, so I try and get the ground as best I can. Healing and physical resistance, again, order of the day for Lariel. That Shield of Thorns providing physical resistance is a nice way to just keep from taking damage in the first place. Also going to pop the, what is that, Star of Avalorn. I don't use a Lariel that much, to be honest, so I forget these things. But yeah, just to provide some nice healing sustain, as I am going to have to fight on top of some Chaos Halberds here with the 2 Chaos characters as well. Just want to be able to sit and sustain combat here and not worry too much about it, so you can see the Lions grinding it out. We've got some Rangers mixed in here as well. The Rangers will help provide some anti-infantry to break off some of these Marauders, which they have done. Illyrian Reaver's also been super cost-effective, just annoying the heck out of these Horsemasters, cleaning up some routing units as well. You can see the Chaos Knights make it all the way back to this position here, but the whole time it's just been pawed at and clawed at by War Lions, White Lions, Spearmen, all sorts of different stuff, so it's been an uncomfortable situation for them. No doubt, Lariel took a bunch of damage from the 2 Chaos characters, and I kind of had to concede that position. The Rangers end up getting eaten up there, of course, without the Star of Avalorn continuing to sustain. The Lions would have got dragged down by overwhelming Halberd force, so there's that, but it's all good. Lariel's most likely going to be able to recover here, and the Reavers are still just like soloing these Marauder Horsemasters, kind of getting favorable engagements against them individually without having taken too much damage. Really a favorable situation for me to be in. I mean, Horsemasters are pretty good, but the Reavers themselves, their melee stats allow them to trade pretty cost effectively there. Despite the Horsemasters' sort of extra stats over regular horsemen. Enfeebling Foe on the Omen of Asuryan, though, it's getting dangerously low. I'm definitely looking for that healing proc, and if that does not go off, I'm going to be in big trouble. But the Chaos Knights also come back from route, get a nice little rear charge here, big shock damage. Thankfully, I do have Shield of Thorns active to help shrug off some of that, but the War Lions definitely took a good amount of damage on that little push right there. The Omen of Asuryan also routes at this point. Does get his healing proc, which I didn't realize actually does a little explosion that looked like it staggered and possibly damaged the 2 Chaos characters as well. But you can see I'm starting to clean up on the infantry fight. These White Lions have been awesome, just supporting a number of different engagements here. We've cleaned up most of the Halberds here. This Halberd unit also almost gone. Lariel is definitely in trouble, but another Shield of Thorns, I think, or something, going to try and be cast there. Yeah, Penumbral Pendulum from the Shadow Sorcerer. Hasn't had a lot of good opportunities to use that because I have a pretty small model count army. I mean, only came in here less than 600 models to begin with. So, Lariel is definitely paying the price, though. And that is one way to potentially get back in. Omen of Asuryan is going to drop a little flaming cone of Phoenix Diarrhea. you know, the Flaming Phoenix Feces Full Cone Edition. It looks absolutely gorgeous, by the way. And that will certainly help disrupt. I mean, it didn't save Alarielle. Alarielle just straight up went down there, but she's done enough to sustain. All the lions are still alive in pretty good health. We've got these two also reasonably close to their healing cap from those Stars of Avalorn there. But the lions also, sorry, rangers coming in to help clean up those hounds. Again, the fact that hounds count as infantry does actually work in, against them. It works for them in a number of situations. You can charge into spears and, you know, anti-large type units without as much worry. But against anti-infantry type units like these war lions, they struggle. And even rangers too. Great at cleaning up the flanks, protecting against hound harass. Anyway, fun game, great game to the Emperor. It was a fun one. Again, he's one of my new patrons. Some of you guys might have noticed if you watched to the end, I've got a new little fancy outro credits scene featuring all of my patron names. So if you want to see your name up there, feel free to support in that way. But regardless, definitely a fun one. You know, the Manticore Sorcerer is somewhat uncommon, but also a pretty decent pick. It can be a little bit risky against high elves because of the Tempest. I didn't actually bring Tempest here, although certainly I could have, and that would have made things a bit tougher for them. They were able to beat down Alarielle pretty hard, but she got enough healing sustain here to allow these lions, even though they didn't mostly pay for themselves, the fact that they have HP remaining, you know, means that they also tanked out a lot of damage and were providing power into the late game. The Reavers, honestly, were a massive value train, helping clean up those peripheral engagements, getting some good support initially. That initial break, I think, with the Phoenix plus the Reavers on the one Horsemaster was pretty important, because it started kind of a steamroll where my Reavers were able to not get, you know, overwhelmed by numbers of Horsemasters, which would have been the biggest danger to them here, I think. Likewise, the Hounds were over on the opposite flank getting mauled by angry lions, so that also freed up my Reavers to kind of come through and clean up the rest of that. You know, from the Emperor's perspective, he's a patron of mine, so just offering, you know, a little bit of coaching here. Maybe it would have been better to keep those Warhounds just protecting the back and using them to counteract the Reavers, rather than trying to go for a flank attack, or even just keeping them in reserve to chase routing units only. But still, the rest of the army here, my infantry did reasonably decent. I mean, Spearmen with 600 value, I ain't gonna complain too much about that. Again, the White Lions don't quite pay for themselves, but definitely good support value in a lot of key situations. The Halberds definitely generate some nice value. One of them especially gets some inflated value fighting healed lions, but there you go. The Knights, we both kind of agreed, had a tough time here. Would have probably been better to distribute that value out. Gorby's Chariots, you know, it's not going to allow you to take necessarily more units overall, but the Gorby's Chariot itself will fulfill a similar sort of anti-infantry shock role while being a little bit easier to manage. It has a higher degree of survivability. It's much harder to tie down, and you can just keep it rolling with good micro, you know, throughout the battle. And especially with the small model count that I had, I would have had a hard time managing a Gorby's Chariot, you know, on top of everything else. Would have had to peel some of these maybe war lines to go fight it, which isn't necessarily the most efficient engagement. And likewise, from an infantry perspective, I know warriors with great weapons would have traded even worse against the lions, but they would have traded better against all of my infantry. And I think in most matchups, outside of very specific, like, monster matchups, most of the time I think you want great weapons over halberds. Just my own personal opinion. They tend to trade better against all infantry types, and they are good enough against cavalry and other large armored units that they can fulfill the same role of halberds without having as many downsides, in terms of infantry trades at least. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. It's definitely a fun one. Hopefully you enjoyed that. I know I sure did. If you like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button, so every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thank you once again for watching, and we'll see you next time.